What's going on YouTube? Cloverbells here, back with another Scarlet Violet video, and today we're going to be building around Roaring Moon. So now this is a Pokemon that I've taken a little bit of an interest in as of late, just because it's actually quite good in Regulation E, and I think it's a little bit better than it was in Regulation E just because of the value of flying type attacks and typing, especially with Ogerpon running around, right? Because Ogerpon is generally weak to these flying type attacks, especially the grass variant, right? So that being said, Roaring Moon also gets knockoff this time, which is very, very good for it, right? Because again, you get a nice little boost if, if there's an item to be held over there. That being said, from here, Acrobatics is always relatively strong on Roaring Moon, especially with, Terra Flying. This will help you against, the fighting weakness, because now you can resist it. And then at the same time, it'll make your fairy weakness neutral damage, right? And then over here is just Protect. Okay, and then the other thing that I was, considering with Roaring Moon is the fact that one way to deal with it is you just Intimidate, spam it to death, with these Landoruses and these Arcanines, both of which can do relatively well into the Roaring Moon matchup. So then why don't we try and punish that? So let's go with the Milotic here, another new Pokemon that, well, technically another one of the new old ones that we're getting with the DLC. And if you don't know what Milotic can do for this team, basically it's all about competitive here. And with the Intimidate cycling into Roaring Moon, now what happens is Milotic gets a +2 special attack boost, which is quite good for it. And you can even consider something like Empoleon in this slot as well, because now Empoleon also gets competitive as well. And, with the Flash Cannon and the Hydro Pump, dual stab, you actually do relatively well into stuff like Chi-Yu and Flutter Mane, and more on Empoleon a little bit later. But of course, I ultimately decided with Milotic here. And then what you can do with Milotic is basically, remember, you get access to Scald again. And a lot of people have been, dying for Pokemon with Scald, right? People that are tired of missing Hydro Pumps, especially with like Iron Bundle, right? So now you get the access to Scald, and now you can burn a lot of these physical attackers potentially, even if they resist it, right? The goal is, can I at least burn you so this way you don't do any damage? And Milotic can do that. And then from here, you have just access to Recover and Protect. So longevity over time is going to be relatively important for it. And then over here, you have the option, in my opinion, to either go for something like Ice Beam, which is great into something like Tornadus or Landorus, and then other flying types in general. And then at the same time, you can also go for Icy Wind, which can give you a little bit of speed control as well, right? And again, with Milotic, it's pretty bulky in terms of its like special defense, so it can tank a lot of these, Flutter Mane hits. It's great HP, the defense is a little bit lacking, but this is why you add Intimidate on the team, right? Because look, Roaring Moon, same kind of idea. You're pretty good in special defense, just like Milotic, but your physical defense is definitely lacking, which is why a team like this definitely needs the Intimidate support, or screens for that matter. So enter Landorus, right? So now we get the much needed Intimidate support. And then at the same time, Landorus Milotic is actually a pretty decent combo as well, right? Because again, one way to also neuter the Landorus is with like an opposing Intimidator, right? You cycle it in, and now Landorus as a physical attacker just doesn't do a whole lot of damage, but now you bring in the Milotic, and now the Milotic is doing a lot more damage with its Scalds and even Icy Winds for that matter. And then there's some good synergy here with Roaring Moon, because, if you have a booster energy, Terra Flying Acrobatics here, now Landorus all of a sudden has the ability to even click Earthquake next to the Roaring Moon here, right? And most teams that run Roaring Moon want to be able to Terra this Pokemon a lot more often than some of the other options, right? And then understanding that, you just go for Earthquake on your Landorus, because, most times this will be clicking, Terra Flying, or you can even just click Protect and then click your Earthquake. But ultimately, I think a Choice Scarf here makes a lot of sense, especially if you're a team that just doesn't really rely on Tailwind. So Icy Wind along with like a Choice Scarf user is one way to go about it. And then here in this Roaring Moon slot, you even have access to something like Tailwind to give the entire team speed control, or you can also go with something like Dragon Dance. Really up to you, as far as like you, the viewer, is concerned. And they both work, and obviously both can do a lot of different things for your own team, but just all depends on how you want to play the Roaring Moon. Okay, but we'll leave that slot blank for a second. I'm just explaining the team composition as far as like what you want to add to this team, right? So we got 2 physical attackers, we got 1 special attacker here, and again, Milotic being weak to Wild Charge from an Iron Hands or like a Rillaboom, Wood Hammer / Grassy Glide, or even like an Ogerpon, Ivy Cudgel, right? Or even like a Wood Hammer for that matter. It really helps to have an Intimidate supporter on the team, right? But naturally, of course, just in terms of an EV, you're going to have some special attack investment, almost max HP, and a good amount of defense. So this way you can tank a lot of these physical hits and then just rely on recover over time to just help you get some of that health back. All right. So then how do you support these 3 Pokemon, right? Because you got a Dragon type already, you got a Water type. So now you just have to consider, okay, can I get another good special attack? Can I get Fake Out on this team, right? And you can go with Iron Hands here. So Iron Hands, Landorus, again, Iron Hands is just relatively good overall, right? Because it just does so well into a lot of different things in the meta. I always call it the glue of like competitive Pokemon at this given moment, because you can slap it onto a lot of different teams and it'll do well. You can put it on hyper offensive teams, it'll do fine. You can put it on Trick Room teams, it'll do fine. You can put it on balanced teams, it can do fine. It's literally a safe option in a lot of different team compositions, right? So I call it the Swiss Army knife or the chameleon, right? Of competitive Pokemon at the given moment. But you get Fake Out Pressure, you get Wild Charge, all right, really good into, of course, other flying types, other water types, like another Milotic, for example. Then you get Drain Punch, okay, and then finally Heavy Slam, good steel coverage to be able to snipe some of those Flutter Manes, for example, right? So we got Intimidate, we got Fake Out. I would like to get maybe a little bit of Redirection or maybe even another special attacker, because right now I've got 3 physical options and then 1 special option. So you can't tell me Flutter Mane doesn't work here, right? So look at this core, like Landorus, Iron Hands, Flutter Mane. This is a very, very familiar trio. And again, Flutter Mane also enjoys Landorus Intimidate support because, again, look at this. Another Pokemon with, very, very good special defense. A little bit weak physically, but if you got some help with the Landorus here, that can help a lot. But of course, in terms of an EV spread, we're always going to be relatively bulkier, enough to survive Chien-Pao Adamant attacks, right? So now that being said, look at this. We've got a water type, we got a dragon type here, we got a fairy type. I would love to get a steel type. I might not be able to get it, but at the end of the day, you can still have something like Amoonguss here, which works a lot because now you get redirection support. And again, the familiar, now you have a familiar 4 Pokemon, right? Landorus, Iron Hands, Amoonguss, and Flutter Mane. Literally 4 Pokemon that you can slap onto any team, right? And then just have 2 flexible slots as far as like filling in the archetype, right? Whether it's like Chien-Pao Urshifu, Chien-Pao Ogerpon, Goldango Tornadus, that kind of thing. These 4 Pokemon are going to work on a lot of different squads no matter what. And that's kind of how you want to build in the early get-go. Just use cores that have been proven over time and are just relatively consistent, right? So this way you have a little bit of flexibility in testing some of your ideas, right? So you can definitely use Amoonguss here, but I ultimately also decided to just slap on the Ogerpon here, especially the fire variant, because now look at this. You get a water type here and you get a fire and a grass. So you have a fire, water, grass core going for you. And, this also gets access to Follow Me, the same way that Amoonguss can give you Rage Powder. I'm not quite sure which one is better in that slot at this given moment, but I think they both can do well, depending on the circumstance, right? So, this is the 6 that I've been working with, and, it's a cool team, right? It's not something that you'd, just go into line and say like, oh yeah, I've seen this team 5 million times, right? It's not your typical Tornadus plus Urshifu, Chien-Pao shenanigans or Dragonite, Flutter Mane, Cresselia, Ursaluna, that kind of stuff. This is like something that's a little bit of a breath of fresh air, but you still have a lot of these strong top 20, top 10 Pokemon, top 30 even, okay? And Milotic is a little bit of a niche, right? But again, you look at this, Roaring Moon, Landorus, Iron Hands. You want to intimidate them to, reduce the amount of damage that they're dealing. Slap on the Milotic, make them think twice about bringing that Intimidate Mon, and then punish him. Because who are the premier intimidators? Landorus and Arcanine. Milotic can do well against both of them, right? And then from here, so what I want to do now is just show you the rest of the team in terms of like the movesets, the EVs, the items, and then just test it in a couple battles. All right, let's go back here into Roaring Moon. All right, back here into Roaring Moon, and like I said, so you have your 3 stab moves, and it's really just a toss-up, like I mentioned, how you want to play this. Either you're going the Tailwind route or you're going the Dragon Dance route, of course. But if you just look at the team, you know, you can see a lot of Pokemon here that can really benefit from Tailwind, especially like Milotic and Landorus. These are like mid-tier Pokemon that can really benefit from like Tailwind support. So you can definitely go that route. And then Ogerpon and Flutter Mane, same thing, right? You know, potential mirror matchups where like speed is very, very important. So like you could definitely see, you know, something like Tailwind being important. Okay, but if you are someone that's like just a straight up Dragon Dance user, you can definitely go with that route. But I'll give you like 2 Pokepastes, I guess, you know, one with Dragon Dance and Amoonguss versus like this one with like Tailwind and Ogerpon. So at least this way you have an option to choose for you and what best fits for you. All right, anyway, Milotic here. So with Scald, Icy Wind, Recover, Protect, I think literally you just want something like Leftovers here, or even like a Citrus Berry for recovery. Okay, if this was Rillaboom, I'd probably just go like Grassy Seed here, get a defense boost. But ultimately, this is totally fine. And if you really wanted to, you could even like be aggressive here and put like a Life Orb on this Milotic, but I don't think you need to do that. Milotic's job is just to like be supportive altogether and just really, you know, make the opponent not bring their Intimidate Mon, or if they do, punish them for it. And then at the same time, you know, just understand, you know, it's all about like being lowered by a stat. So like if they have Bleakwind Storm, right, you know, they have to take the risk in giving you competitive, right? Especially if it's a Tornadus team. And then if they have Icy Wind, especially, they gotta take a risk. You can even switch in onto the Icy Wind if you think they're gonna click it. And then Milotic is just gonna go ham from there, right? And just be bulky behind the competitive boost. So, you know, they have to be a little bit careful in what kinds of moves they want to click. All right. Anyway, I still think we go Terra Grass here, especially, you know, this is great into the electric weakness. At the same time, you know, grass weakness altogether. And then, for, you know, of course, Amoonguss shenanigans. All right, Landorus here. So I think you go something like this with Stomping Tantrum, Earthquake, Rock Slide, and U-Turn. You know, very standard moveset here. And if you're thinking like Terra Blast, Terra Flying here, you know, you could do that, right? But then that means you're not tearing the Roaring Moon, okay? And by doing that, you know, now you're just relying on, you know, Acrobatics, non-Terra Flying. And then, you know, not, if you're fine with that, great. But, you know, I like to use this Landorus as more of a pivot option that can just click Earthquake, Choice Scarf, ultimately, you know, in front of a lot of different things, and then synergize that with Terra Flying, Roaring Moon, because it's a pretty good combination if you think about it. All right. Then over here, Flutter Mane, you know, again, because booster energy is here, I think here you just go like either the Pixie Plate / Fairy Feather route. I'm going to do Fairy Feather, just because it's a new item and I can click it because I can. And then ultimately like Shadow Ball here, all right, along with Protect. Now, ultimately, you can even just simply do stuff like Moonblast and Dazzling Gleam. That's totally fine. But if you're really worried about like the Trick 'em matchup, so what I would just do is like, you know, put Substitute on this. So you can even do like Shadow Ball, Dazzling Gleam, and then just go like Substitute, right? If that's, you know, the way you want to go about it. But when I was just using the team at the given moment, I was using Shadow Ball and Moonblast. I didn't have Dazzling Gleam because I wanted a little bit more single target damage. Because ultimately, you know, because you have this, okay, I went a timid route because I wanted to win potential speed ties. So that's the way I decided to go about it. But here in the Iron Hands, this is relatively fine. Again, like Terra Grass is okay. Now, this might make you weak to the Fire Ogerpon altogether and might make you weak to like flying damage. But, you know, it's also fine to go like Terra Water. Terra Water is also pretty good. It just really depends on how you want to play the Iron Hands. Ultimately, when I was testing the video, I just went with Terra Grass. But if you like Terra Water, that's also good. But Ogerpon here, of course, we can't really do anything about this. But of course, Ivy Cudgel here. Now, you can go Horn Leech for, you know, a grass move and then a little bit of recovery. I think that's totally fine. If you want, you know, more damage, just go with the Wood Hammer. And then, of course, Spiky Shield here in the last slot here. Of course, this is your Protect, right? And this is it. I think we, oh wait, I do want Terra Fairy on this Flutter Mane, by the way. Yeah, I think this is fine. But again, in the video, I was doing like Dragon Dance, so I'm just gonna do Dragon Dance. I'm sorry, the test battles. But again, I do like Tailwind on this Roaring Moon. And like I said, I will give you 2 Pokepastes in the video description. But for now, I'll just keep like the Dragon Dance potentially here. All right, so from here, in terms of the EV set, so this is what I was doing. I went Adamant Nature. All right, I went to the second benchmark, the second EV bump here in attack. which is right here, 164 investment. And like I do in all my team building videos, right, I always say, if you don't know what EV bumps are and you're trying to play competitive Pokemon, please ask in the comments below. Comment asking what are EV bumps, because if they are one of the most fundamental aspects of competitive Pokemon, especially with like team building, in terms of those EV bumps. So if you don't know what they are, comment and I will answer them, right? But ultimately, what it is like every 80 EVs that you hit here after the first bump, your stat will increase by 2 points, right? Because as I'm investing EVs, you see how it's going up by 1 point every time. But ultimately, what's going to happen is like there's going to be a point here where it goes up by 2 points. You see how it goes from 196 to 198? What happened to the 197? That's a bump, okay? And here's the second one. The third one is another 80 EVs, okay? But of course, we can't really reach that far, so 164 is pretty good. All right, actually, no, we can right here. I did math wrong. 207, 209. Here's the third bump, almost literally max, but I kept it at 164 because I was going for other things in terms of optimization. But this is it. We don't really need speed up, so I just put 4 there. And then in terms of our speed tier, I went right here to 192. I'm sorry, 92 investment, which gets me to 151. This will outspeed Adamant Urshifu, that is a max speed one, because they cap at 149. Same thing with like Goldengos at that point. But I'm speed creeping, right? All you really need is 150, but I went to 151 for speed creeping. And then from here, it's just hitting these benchmarks in HP. So 207 is another good one. And then just dump the rest into HP like this, right? And this is our Roaring Moon set, right? Milotic here. So same idea. Again, modest nature. Let's hit the first bump. That's really all I want out of it. In terms of like damage, because the idea is that you're supposed to be bulky and then you're getting the competitive boost anyway, which is +2, so you're going to be doing a lot of damage from that. So let's stay on the field and let's do some damage, right? So no need for Spadef, just about 1 point here. But at the end of the day, I was trying to do something like this where I went like max HP and then like almost the rest in defense, right? I went to about 107, of course, because at the time, when I did have Tailwind here, which I'll put here in a second, I went to 107 because at least under Tailwind you outspeed Dragon Ball because you hit 214, and then I literally just dumped the rest into defense like this, right? And this was my Milotic set. But what I wanted to do was to try and live a potential wild charge from an Iron Hands without necessarily relying on Intimidate. So what I did was I went into the damage calc and just to see if this was truly enough bulk where I could accomplish that, right? So let's go into the Pokemon damage calc here. All right, and now we go into Milotic. Let me upload Milotic here. I already had the set, so I just uploaded it. So let's go to level 50 here. And my investment was, what is this, 252, 132? All right, so let's do that. So let's go to 252, let's go to 132 here. All right, and let's go to an Iron Hands with Adamant 156, all right? I think that's a good baseline in terms of that. Not too many Iron Hands are like max attack. If you are someone that is running max attack Iron Hands, I need to know who you are. Make sure you comment in the video below so I can find out who you are. Anyway, let's go to 156. All right, so this is it. So not bad, right? 12.5% chance. That's pretty good actually, right? But I wanted to get this to at least like 6.5. So ultimately what I did was just drop this, increase defense until I could pretty much get the calc that I want, right? Because right now it's just floating on the 12.5% chance, but here it is. Now it's down to 6.3. Which is exactly what I wanted. So 228, 156 is what I did. So somewhat breaking of my optimization rules here, but that's really the calc that I wanted, just to at least get that favorable roll to survive that wild charge from the Iron Hands. Okay, and then from here, if you really wanted to, you could even check out like Rillaboom stuff. So you could even do like Rillaboom. By the way, you are dying to like Woodhammer. Don't even try and lift that. But with Intimidate, yeah, you can, it'll give you some help, right? A little bit of a roll. This is 196 Rillaboom, by the way. If it was 116, this is still a pretty good roll in terms of like Woodhammer damage, right? So there's that. But if this was like Grassy Glide, for example, let's even just put this in. Like Grassy Glide just got nerfed so hard, right? So, 116 Rillaboom Grassy Glide with this investment, it's a 3-hit KO. So I was like, you know what? This is actually a pretty good defensive spread. So I stuck with it. Right, and even if this was like 252, all right, Grassy Glide is still just not doing a whole lot of damage altogether, right? And then even without the Intimidate support, like Grassy Glide is just doing something, it's just not doing a lot. So, you know, this bulk was like totally worth it. All right, and anyway, Landorus here. So Landorus, Adamant Nature again, just to the first bump is all I really needed. I did consider the second bump, and we'll show you what that looks like in a second, but you know, this is really all I wanted. Max speed, Adamant Landorus, and then just dump the rest into HP like this. You know, 143 outspeeds Dragapult with the Choice Scarf anyway, so that was also pretty good. But what I also considered was just this, where you just have Adamant 116 with a little bit of HP. So this Landorus is now doing a little bit more damage, which is good, right? So if you like this, you can definitely do that. But I was just doing this. I wanted to have like a little bit of bulk on this Landorus while still having good speed and having decent damage. All right, so I went this route. But if you are someone that likes Adamant 116 Landorus, you can definitely do that. All right, Flutter Mane here. So consider the fact that Chien-Pao's at max speed, Adamant hit 187. So, you know, you want to outspeed that 188. So all you need is this much investment. And then for a little bit of speed cream, you can even go to 189. But at the end of the day, I just did this. 108 investment along with 196 was enough to survive the Chien-Pao Adamant Icicle Crash / Ice Spinner, Sucker Punch, whatever you want to say, and then special attack here just a tiny bit, right? So it's somewhat of a weak Flutter Mane, but it'll help you in some of those Trick Room games, even Tailwind games, where you can just click sub and deal a bunch of damage behind the sub, especially like Shadow Balls and Moonblast. So do with that with what you will. But you can also consider just going modest here, right? Because you have Tailwind support on this type of Roaring Moon. So if you want to go like modest, you can definitely do that, and then just do something like this, where you just go modest 36 in that sense, and now you're getting a, you know, a special attack bonus, and then here you can just go to about 175 here, which will outspeed max speed Adamant Dondozo, which is pretty good, right? And then just dump the rest into something like this here. Let's go to 116, 196. You can just add it into HP like this and totally fine. And then this is a modest Flutter Mane, right? Meant to do a ton of damage with Shadow Ball and Moonblast, right? You can even consider like Dazzling Gleam now here. So it makes a big difference in terms of how much damage it does, like with or without the +1. All right, but ultimately, I did settle on Timid here. But if you have Tailwind, I think you can just afford to go modest. But because at the time I didn't have Tailwind, I was going Dragon Dance. So then at the end, I just went with like, you know, a Timid set here. So let me just readjust the EVs back here. All right, so let's go back to 132 investment and 108, and then back here to 68. All right, and again, like I said, I'll show you both pastes on the screen when we're all finished. This one, I always just choose this, man. Like I never really changed my Iron Hand set, like even since like regulationE, because this is always like a good baseline. You know, just max the Spadef, you know, for the Flutter Mane damage, and then just get a little bit of speed. So this way, you know, potential speed ties could be in your favor because you have some speed investment. But, you know, if you see an Iron Hands on a Tailwind team, they're going to have more speed than you, and they're going to invest so that they outspeed a Chi-Yu, right, with their own Tailwind, which is important, right? But this is not that kind of Iron Hands. Ogerpon here. So, you know, I just went something like this where, again, like 155 investment. This is, you know, with Tailwind, you're going to outspeed a +1 speed boosting Flutter Mane. So I just went with that. And again, I'll show you that that type of set in a second. But anyway, I just went first bump here and then just literally just put 1 point in the bulks and then just dump the rest into HP like this. That's all I really needed from Ogerpon here because I'm getting a +1 boost, you know, when I go with Heartflame Mask anyway. So in that sense, okay, sure. But, you know, if you don't do it, then, you know, you're just tired the Roaring Moon most. But again, you can definitely put like Amoonguss here. I think it's totally fine. But either way, this is the Ogerpon set that I was running with. But if you want to like drop him a little bit, you can do something like this, where you can do like 154 here and just do like this actually, right? Because now you're hitting the second bump here. You're dealing a little bit more damage and you have some bulk. So you can definitely just settle like this. All right, so we have pretty much the baseline in terms of like the sets here. So what I'm gonna do is just show you both pastes, all right, at the end of the video, you know, with the Amoonguss along with like Dragon Dance / Tailwind, and then you can pick and choose which one you like to play, right? But what I want to do is at least show you this 6 in a couple of sample battles, right? So let's take a look. All right, so here's a first sample game here. So this is a pretty interesting team. He's got Ogerpon, Tornadus, Chien-Pao, and a Chio here. His team is would be 10 times scary if this Clefairy was actually a Flutter Mane, but there is a Clefairy here for some reason. I would imagine to set up maybe Swords Dance plays here, and then just sit behind the Violet Friend Guard. But if I were him, I would just go Flutter Mane here. So ultimately, look, man, Roaring Moon Landorus looks really good here because you can't get hit by the Earth move here. You got Rock Slide potential against a lot of these mons, and even Earthquake spam is also pretty threatening. So I think Landorus is just a safe bet here. And he goes with Tornadus and the Ogerpon. So Landorus as a lead looks great right off the rip because now we get to intimidate the Ogerpon. And this Ogerpon is just not going to be doing a whole lot of damage to Roaring Moon. So this was a free Dragon Dance. Even if he goes for like the Tailwind, it doesn't really matter because I get to just sit here and click Dragon Dance, right? So there's the Mold Breaker. But ultimately, again, he goes into Chien-Pao here. So that's just free Rock Slide damage in all honesty. All right, so here it is. That's a lot of damage. Thank you for that. And then here's the Dragon Dance, right? Now, what I could have done next turn, and then you'll see it, is just literally protect the Roaring Moon and then just Terra Water Landorus and click Rock Slide, because that plays into both decisions that my opponent has to make. Either he Icicle crashes or Ice Spinners the Roaring Moon or the Landorus, right? And, you know, he either goes into the Protect or he goes into the Terra Water. But I made a mistake. I didn't let the Roaring Moon protect. I tried to be a little bit more aggressive. He chose the Roaring Moon here. So that was unfortunate. I lose the 50-50 in that sense, but I get to still click Rock Slide. But you can see how much this would have been great if I just clicked Protect and Roaring Moon. And now I would have Roaring Moon against a lot of these mons here, right? Which, you know, they can't really do a whole lot. And then Landorus would have been okay. But because of that, I still have to like play the game a little bit. So I would love to cycle against the Ogerpon yet again. And, you know, Landorus is still going to be pretty good into the Ursaluna later. So I'm going to forego my Milotic here. Okay, which could have been good against this Ursaluna. But he clicks Power Whip. Great play there because he sees a Terra. He gets a crit, by the way. So I don't know if I probably could have lived that, you know, because, you know, it was neutral. But who's to know now? But here's the Landorus. Now I get the Intimidate of the Ogerpon, so that's good. He goes for Swords Dance. That's a good play by him. And that's probably why he had the Clefairy on the team. But, you know, there's the Earth Power. It doesn't do a whole lot of damage. And it was even Life Orb too, right? So we just get rid of the Ursaluna because I know I can win this 2-on-1 against this Ogerpon. But he did Swords Dance. So he has to make a choice. I'm faster because I'm Scarf. That's good damage. He clicks the Landorus, but, you know, that means the Iron Hands gets to clean up here and finish the job here. So we end up winning anyway, despite losing the Roaring Moon early. But yeah, like I said, I could have just protected the Roaring Moon there, or even switched into the Milotic and it would have been fine. But, you know, me letting it die too easily just made the game a little bit more interesting. But you get to see Landorus finish things off, right, along with Iron Hands. All right, we got another Wheezing player here. And again, like, my thoughts on Wheezing, like, I understand you guys want to, like, turn off abilities, but it's just too passive. It doesn't really do a whole lot, and it just gets doubled in after that first Protect. So, like, I'm looking at his team, like, you know, 5 great Pokemon here. Like, if this was just maybe even, like, Tornadus or, like, a Flutter Mane, for example, or maybe even, like, an Urshifu Dark, that would have been also cool. But, again, I do see his Fire, Water, Grass Core. But he does have a Wheezing here, so, okay, go figure. But in the grand scheme of things, I think I'm not going to lead Landorus. I know he wants to lead Milotic because he thinks I'm going to lead Landorus. But Roaring Moon Ogerpon is pretty good here because I have Follow Me Dragon Dance potential here. Which is exactly what I'm going to go for because this Milotic could just easily click Protect in front of the Grass move. Right, so there's the Protect, and there's the Follow Me. I'm going to redirect whatever he's trying to click, especially if it was like Will-O-Wisp. So there's the Sludge Bomb. Does a lot, but here we go. Terra Flying. Let's protect the Ogerpon. Let's remove the Milotic. If he Will-O-Wisp me now, okay, sure, great. But he still just wants to go into the Ogerpon here, so Protect ends up being really good there. And here's his own Ogerpon. So let me just go into Landorus, get the Intimidate down. I know he protects because, you know, this is a flying type already. And the Wheezing actually lives. That's so crazy. And he does Will-O-Wisp me. But again, this is fine because now, you know, we just click Earthquake. He Terrifies. That's worse for him, right? Just get rid of this Earthquake and it just removes everything. And you see the synergy with Roaring Moon Landorus, especially if you just Terra it. And now all he has is a Rillaboom, and that can't even beat a Burned Roaring Moon here, so he just ultimately forfeits. But yeah, you get to see a lot of these cool combos. And again, this is the idea by synergizing Landorus and Roaring Moon. All right, so here's the first version of the pace, and I made a one little tweak here. I just took away some of that defense and put it in speed here, so this way the Roaring Moon now hits 155 speed, and the Ogerpon hits 154. So this way you're still achieving the same thing in terms of outspeeding, +1 speed boosting Flutter Manes under Tailwind. But I just made sure that they didn't speed tie. So, go figure for that. And then because I have a Tailwind here, I made this Flutter Mane modest nature as opposed to the timid one that I showed in the building aspect of the video. In terms of Milotic, I kept that pretty much the same. Landorus, Iron Hands, they pretty much stayed the same. It was just small EV tweaks, to these three. And then this variant has Amoonguss, right? And also this has Dragon Dance as opposed to Tailwind, right? And the difference now is, of course, there's an Amoonguss here instead of the Ogerpon, so you have a little bit better of a Trick Room matchup, and you get Spore Pressure, of course. The Flutter Mane, as a result, I made it Timid Nature, with Substitute here. And then the Roaring Moon here, I've adjusted the TV slightly here, so I dropped some of the speed and put some back into defense. So I'm still fast enough to outspeed, max speed Urshifu. But, Dragon Dance is still, very, very good move here. Now, the rest of the team has to rely on, Choice Scarf Landorus and Icy Wind to, outspeed things. But at the end of the day, you have Dragon Dance to outspeed those threats. And then, of course, you have the Intimidate, Fake Out, Redirection support from Landorus, Amoonguss, and the Iron Hands. But all in all, I feel like both teams can do relatively well. But at the very least, these are some of the ideas that you can think about when you're trying to build with Roaring Moon and even a Milotic here. And like I showed in the beginning, you could even put what's that thing called? Empoleon here in that Milotic slot. But if that is something that you wish to not do, then you don't have to do it. But anyway, let me know what you think of Roaring Moon here and even Milotic in this kind of format, and let me know what you've been running with it. And again, if you're trying to go to a regional in October and you need a little bit of help with regulationE as far as getting something for ladder or for an online tournament or a regional, check out coaching on the channel. We have team building sessions like this where we get to hash out all the EVs. If you book a session with me, just make sure to message me on Discord saying, hey, let's get a meeting together. But in order to sign up, again, if you click the link in the video description, there is a link to the tier 3 sub. And also in the comment section, there is a pinned comment where, yet again, same thing. You can click that link in the comments and sign up under tier 3 and book your team building session with me. All right. But that's going to be it for now, folks. We'll be back with another video in the next one, guys. Peace out and have a good one.